The Omen, a horror masterpiece that gives audiences the chance to see what would happen if the devil walked the earth.
In the box office, it was a hit. Audiences loved it, critics loved it. In the 40 years since The Omen was released, it's become an undisputed cult classic.
In Oklahoma, a teenager with a thirst for the occult tries to create his very own evil omen.
Sean, I believe, was drawn to Satanism. Ultimately takes him down a really dark road.
But the more he delves into the demonic abyss, the closer Sean comes to murder.
For Sean, breaking that 10th commandment of thou shalt not kill certainly manifested itself in the murder of Robert Bauer. But I think there was more to it than that. It was a test for Sean to see if he could actually kill his parents.
I looked at him, and my mother, there was blood running out the side of her head. And I stood there and I laughed.
They didn't realize that within their child was brewing so much rage, so much anger. They didn't have a clue how things were actually going to turn out.
In 1976, director Richard Donner, now famous for The Goonies and Lethal Weapon, releases the controversial satanic horror film, The Omen.
In the 70s, it was the beginning of when the media began to show a bit of a darker side. The film had a very successful marketing campaign prior to its release. There were sneak previews, and they had a novel written. They even managed to work in 666 to the movie's title.
Despite its taboo themes, The Omen strikes box office gold.
The movie was nominated for 2 Academy Awards and went on to win for Best Original Score for Jerry Goldsmith's outstanding composition.
In the film's opening scene, Robert, played by Academy Award winner Gregory Peck, learns his newborn son died shortly after birth. Fearing the news will devastate his wife, Robert takes the advice of a hospital priest and adopts another baby named Damien.
Everything is fine and great in The Omen, and then the audience learns that this is not actually a child, it is the spawn of Satan. And soon, terrible things begin to happen. It's clear that Damien is in control and will stop at nothing until he gets what he wants.
It's a theme that resonates with 16-year-old Sean Sellers. And like Damien from The Omen, what starts out as an innocent childhood will end in unspeakable violence.
And I lifted the gun up and I put it close to her head. And I pulled the trigger.
This boy, who wanted to be in control and all-powerful, like Damien in The Omen, lost everything.
In Oklahoma City, 8-year-old Sean Sellers is a bright boy who doesn't seem to have a mean bone in his body.
Sean was docile, sweet, mild-mannered, and he always had this little smile on his face.
He excelled academically. He loved to read.
Sean lives with his mother, Vonda, whom he adores.
Vonda was a really good mother, a loving mother. She would do anything to protect him.
In her eyes, he was the perfect child. Vonda was married by the time she was 15 years old and had Sean at 16.
While Vonda's first priority in life is her son, the same cannot be said for his father.
Sean's biological father had what we understand to be a very disturbing drinking problem. And I think a lot of this may have arisen from the fact that he was, by all accounts, a very talented artist, and he was unable to gain steady work from something like that.
He might have been a little bit of a philanderer, and they eventually divorced.
For Sean, life could not have been easy as a child. His father was already gone, completely out of the picture. And Vonda, his mother, had to work all the time.
But then, Vonda meets a man named Paul Belafato. She hopes he can be the father figure missing from Sean's life.
Paul seemed to just take on his little ready-made family and want to do the right thing, and he wanted to provide for them, for Guy's security.
The two eventually marry, but unfortunately, the relationship between Sean and Paul doesn't take off.
What the hell are you watching, boy?
He looked at Sean as if Sean were his own, and that meant as much love as it was tempered with discipline.
It's similar to the way Catherine raises Damien in The Omen.
Robert doesn't share the information about the baby's death with his wife. The priest thinks that it would be best if she just believes that it's her child. Catherine raises the child as though it's her own, not realizing what we know.
A former Green Beret, Paul wants his sensitive, mild-mannered stepson to toughen up.
In my opinion, this military background might have created a more strict atmosphere in the home. Structure, rules you follow.
You see that deer over there, boy? I want you to kill it.
No, I don't want to.
Do it now.
I think he harbored a lot of resentment from Paul, who wanted him to man up.
I don't care what you...
He didn't react well to Paul encouraging him to hunt, to kill animals.
Now, when I say pull the trigger.
No!
The hunting trip really took its toll on Sean. He's nothing in Paul's eyes because he can't hunt and kill.
I said pull the trigger.
And here's this conflict where the father's shaming him and telling him, you're not a good hunter, you're not a man. And how's a child then supposed to cope?
The once happy-go-lucky kid now seems to smile a bit less.
Sean, your stepdad and I are going away for a few days. I want you to be good for Judy when she gets here, okay?
Vonda takes a job with Paul, driving long-haul trucks across the country.
So they decided that this would be the great opportunity to have some extra money for their future.
We'll be fine, Vonda. Let's go.
As a result, Sean spends most of his days either living with relatives or in the company of a babysitter.
The movement was caused by Paul and Vonda trying to have a better life, but they never examined the underlying psychological issues of displacing their child time and time and time again.
Just like Damien in The Omen, Sean begins to turn on his beloved mother and resents her frequent absence. But while Damien is born evil, Sean discovers it by accident.
On one particular occasion, he was being babysat by a young woman that was probably only about 14, 15 years old, and she was into the occult.
And it's not long before Sean gets his hands on one of her books.
Here was this book on Satan, and it attracted him. And he could read it and escape into this dark world of magic that offered him power and control within his own life.
But Sean was absolutely fascinated by it. I mean, there were all of a sudden, these figures and these symbols and, goat's heads and all kinds of things that he had never witnessed before.
As the nights go by, Sean's fascination with the occult grows.
Here's a boy who's looking for something to latch onto that can help him cope in a life where he feels all alone. And it had a very seductive quality. He has this book that has stayed with him, almost like a security blanket.
I think in the back of his mind, he knew this was not something maybe he really should be doing, but he was just so caught up in it by then.
Sean keeps his demonic interests hidden from his parents.
As I continued and got deeper into it, it eventually became an obsession with me and then definitely took control of my life.
As Sean matures, so does his obsession with the occult.
Sean needed power to control his life, and he didn't care where it came from.
And like Damien from The Omen, Sean's parents will soon learn the terrible truth about their only son.
I stood there and I looked at him. And my mother, there was blood running out the side of her head. I stood there and I laughed.
In the cult classic The Omen, a boy named Damien wreaks havoc on his family by summoning the powers of Satan.
All of these events are occurring, and for a while things seem as though they could just be circumstance. But it is soon very obvious that Damien is controlling these events. He's able to control these occurrences because he is the spawn of Satan.
In the film, satanic ritual takes center stage.
The advantage to being in the occult, according to The Omen, is the power and control of what you want.
It's the same promise that attracts 16-year-old Sean Sellers to the occult. He is inspired to become as powerful as Damien from The Omen in order to control his unhappy life.
He didn't react well to Paul encouraging him to hunt, to kill animals, because all that does is cause shame and humiliation for the child, and ultimately, resentment towards the parent.
Making matters worse, Sean's parents are rarely home.
Although Vonda and Paul wanted this ideal family, they didn't realize that within their child was brewing so much rage, so much anger.
The same anger Damien has in The Omen.
When Damien first summons his demonic powers, tells us that he is evil. Sean Sellers definitely yearns for the kind of power that Damien has.
Like Damien, Sean has been a student of Satan since he was a young boy. And now, he's taken his studies to a whole new level.
Teach me, Lord Satan. Teach me the wisdom of the ages. Come forth. Bring your spirit and let me feel thy presence.
He would cut himself, either with the sword or the knife, and let the blood drip, and then he would drink the blood.
He used that blood to scratch out an oath to the devil. And in this oath, he essentially sold his soul.
Sean begins performing nightly rituals in his room. He looks for proof that Satan is with him.
He wanted to push the envelope more and more and more. He wanted to learn more about demons. He wanted to learn more about the 4 dark forces of the world.
The deeper Sean dives into Satanism, the more powerful he feels.
I can feel you.
For Sean, he feels these demonic spirits now are supporting him, and he has won them over, and he has unlimited power. He feels empowered and free, as if he and the devil are one.
In The Omen, Damien's demonic powers reinforce everyone's belief that he is, in fact, the devil.
It's very similar when Sean Sellers has his first encounter with the occult. It boosts his confidence and strengthens his belief.
Thank you for your wisdom, Master.
And now that Sean is convinced the devil is on his side, he's desperate to do whatever it takes to please him.
He would often call upon a demon to actually enter his body.
Rise. Rise, demon! Rise for all to see!
And so when the demon entered him, he says, his name was Escalating. And Escalating was now in control.
As Escalating, Sean's life changes.
He was a rebel, he wanted to be a rebel, he wanted to be different. It gave him a kind of mystique, I think.
He would paint black his pinky finger. He was growing out his hair, he was wearing dark clothes, and he was stashing vials of his own blood in the refrigerator.
In Sean's mind, he thought, this is working. I am powerful, and people are afraid of me. Sean was definitely making a statement.
What the hell
But
is
Sean's
wrong with you?
parents won't tolerate their son's behavior.
What the hell is wrong with you, boy?
All teenagers test their limits. It's part of growing up. We all want freedom. We all want to be independent. And parents, for better or for worse, sometimes try to block that with rules and guidelines and support. But the teenager doesn't always see it that way.
At school, Sean's obsession with the occult comes to fruition.
Well, Sean wrote this essay, and he said in this essay that he felt free and he could now kill without remorse.
This teacher took action, and she called his mother and explained to her what Sean had done.
Sean, what is going on? Your grades are tanking. You're dressing like some crazy goth person. I don't even know who you are. You're acting like you're possessed by a demon.
Sean felt at this point very alienated from his mother and stepfather. No one likes to be in isolation, and everyone likes to have a sense of belonging. People look for where they fit in.
Luckily, Sean soon reunites with a friend from the past who understands his ways.
Sean and Richard seemed to be like two peas in a pod. Sean was left alone a lot and without his parents around. Richard had been raised by his grandparents. They just immediately felt this connection.
They had been separated for a long time as friends, and when Sean returned with all these fantastical stories of animal sacrifices and witches and flying demons and all this kind of stuff, Richard was naturally interested.
The two are soon inseparable.
They almost became twins, so to speak. They were always together.
There is no life
without death.
There is no love
without hatred.
During a ritual, he would often cut himself and then have Richard drink from his blood so that they would ingest the power that he believed he had, and it also made them brothers within the devil.
Sean and Richard spend most of their days getting into trouble.
What's it gonna be today? It is, it works for me.
Yeah, could I get a pack of Brickstone lights as well, please?
You got some ID on you?
Yeah, I do. Oh, I'm so sorry. I must have forgotten it at home.
You think I'm some kind of fool?
What? No, sir. Hey, what the hell? We were gonna pay for that, man.
He was adamant that no, they were underage and could not produce a driver's license or any identification, so he refused to sell them beer.
What the hell is this? What the heck?
Don't come back. I'll sell to minors, got it?
For Sean, it really triggered something in him. He didn't like that. To him, it was like his parents telling him, no, you can't do that. Sean doesn't handle that rejection very well. He says to Richard, I'm gonna get him, and I'm gonna make him pay. And Richard feels the same way.
Sean tells Richard it's time to take the next step in proving their worth to Satan.
In Sean's mind, he was now the most dangerous man in the world. Anything that is opposite of Christianity is something that the self-styled Satanists are certainly going to do.
It's my granddad's. Only 5 shells, but I think it'll do the job.
Thou shalt not kill being one of the most brutal or the largest sin that one could ever commit.
Just like Damien in The Omen, Sean wants to kill in the name of evil.
For Sean and Richard, now they just needed a victim. And that victim was Robert Bauer, solely for him refusing to sell them a beer.
He said that Richard was egging him on to do it, Sean. Do it. If you're gonna do it.
To commit the ultimate sin, Sean will call on the power of Satan, just like Damien from The Omen.
For Sean, he truly felt that a demon had entered his body. And that demon was giving him the strength to kill.
In the horror movie The Omen, a young boy named Damien is rumored to be the devil himself.
Damien has the number 666 branded on his scalp. Tells us that he is pure evil. It is a brand that ties him to the devil.
Damien becomes a horror legend in Hollywood for years to come.
When The Omen was released 4 decades ago, I don't think anybody knew that it was going to become this undeniable cult classic, and it was huge in the box office. Critics loved it. Audiences couldn't get enough of it.
But in Oklahoma City, 16-year-old Sean Sellers is turning into a real-life Damien. He's ready to prove his loyalty to Satan.
For Sean, thou shalt not kill. That commandment was what he felt he needed to break.
357 Magnum.
And Sean isn't alone in his quest for blood. His friend Richard is by his side. It's similar to the movie The Omen.
Damien's followers were as loyal as they could be. Damien never really acts alone. His nannies are there for him, and he doesn't even have to ask for help. They will do what's necessary.
It seems that Richard always followed Sean's bidding.
For their first satanic sacrifice, Sean and Richard target a store clerk named Robert Bauer.
Don't come back. I'll sell to minors, got it?
Robert refused to sell them the beer. Sean decided that Robert would be the first to see if he could actually pull it off, to see if he could actually pull the trigger.
When Sean and Richard first entered the store,
Hey, man. You again.
they tried to engage Robert Bauer in conversation. It's as if there was no resentment that he had denied them liquor. They were befriending him. And that engagement was putting him at ease.
I just want a pack of gum.
In this particular store, there were no security cameras. And it was in an isolated spot. And so for Robert Bowers, he was truly all alone.
Sean is nervous, so he stalls.
The Omen makes killing look very easy, but in real life, Sean had a bit of a tougher time with it.
The guy left.
According to Sean, it's in this moment of fear his demonic alter ego surfaces.
Kill them
He claimed that he would conjure up demons. Very bizarre.
Kill them now! Kill Sean!
Within a flash of a second, the .357 was in Sean's hand and was pointed at him. Robert ducked, barely missing any graze of the bullet at that time, and took off running, where he was shot again.
He was bent over, and whenever I did shoot him, he fell.
In an instant, Robert is dead.
After Sean shot Robert Bauer, he felt elated, and he just seemed to have no remorse about it or any particular feeling about a human being, taking a human being's life.
Here we have a 16-year-old teenager who just killed an innocent man. And he shows no remorse. In fact, he feels empowered and free. As if he and the devil are one. For Sean, just like Damien in the Omen, they derive strength from death. Innocent killing gives them power that they are both seeking.
For now, Sean thinks he's gotten away with murder.
Police at that time are struggling with the fact that there are no witnesses.
Around his friends, Sean appears to be a new man.
He seemed happy. He was not the least bit remorseful about what he had done. I think we can only assume that he heard about the murder or he read about the murder, and that may have even fueled him even more.
As newfound confidence becomes attractive.
Sean meets a young girl. Her name is Angel.
Sean was immediately attracted to the girl, Angel, who was about his age, and she seemed to be a little smitten with him.
Sean and Angel quickly become inseparable.
She was a little bit of a bad girl, and that seemed to be what drew the two of them together. And he did start falling for her, and she for him.
And it, like satanic worship, possesses him.
It was a love at first sight, and it was a love forever kind of thing. Not so different than a lot of teenagers.
But not everyone is a fan of Angel.
She would come to the house. She apparently was a little bit, maybe, of an annoying personality to his parents, although he did not see her that way, of course.
Angel dropped out of high school. Angel smokes cigarettes. Angel doesn't seem like she's going anywhere.
Angel, I think it's time for you to go home.
Why? She just got here.
Because it's my house and I told her to leave.
Vonda tries to separate Sean from Angel, and Sean becomes angry.
Vonda sees how her son is under the power of love with Angel, and she doesn't like it.
And soon, his already fragile relationship with his mother crumbles.
Sean was asked by his parents to tell her not to come there anymore.
At this point, Sean sees Vonda as his suppressor.
He was not happy about that. He was not a happy camper. So perhaps at this point, maybe he began to form this idea.
Sean's home life has become repulsive to him.
Damien and Sean reject their mothers. Damien tried to kill his mother by causing her to fall, and instead she was knocked unconscious and taken to the hospital, so he was unsuccessful in his first attempt.
And now, Sean has decided to follow in his footsteps.
For Sean, killing his mother is a rational thought. If a cute little boy like Damien can kill his own mother,
This is for you.
Why can't a teenage boy like Sean Sellers do the same?
In the thriller, The Omen, young Damien shocks audiences everywhere when he attempts to kill his own mother.
Damien tried to kill his mother by causing her to fall, and instead she was knocked unconscious and taken to the hospital, so he was unsuccessful in his first attempt.
No one suspects that Damien is a demonic killer.
It's one of those things that you hope to only see in the movies, but sadly that was not the case.
For Satan worshipper Sean Sellers, killing his mother Vonda becomes a mission, just like that of Damien in The Omen. Sean hates her for not accepting his girlfriend, Angel.
Angel, I think it's time for you to go home.
Vonda tries to separate Sean from Angel. The worst thing a parent can ever do is try to separate their teenage son's girlfriend. Becomes almost immediately a Romeo and Juliet type atmosphere.
Yes, she does. Don't push me. You're pushing me. Get off.
Damien and Sean reject their mothers. Sean is a bit more complicated than Damien's, even though Satan is involved. It was just really a broken family.
Just like Damien has done in The Omen, Sean hatches a plan to get back at his mother.
Sean decides that his mother, Vonda, must die. It's just how to do it. And he locates rat poisoning.
Sean was attempting to just perhaps test the waters a little bit. He would give her a little bit of rat poisoning in her coffee.
This is for you.
Sean's first attempt doesn't go as planned.
He wants to see his own mother gag, to have her eyes bulge with horror, for her to bring her hands up to her throat and gasp for air.
Oh, excuse me.
And yet, she doesn't die.
But unfortunately, or fortunately for her, this did not have any effect on her. Maybe she had a strong constitution and it just didn't work. Or maybe she didn't get enough of it in there for it to really, harm her in any way.
And so he needed to think about something else that might work.
Sean's inability to kill his own mother mimics Damien's own struggles in the movie The Omen.
Damien attempts to kill his mother by riding a tricycle into her while she's arranging a plant, and she falls but doesn't die. He had hoped that he would kill her.
Sean just had to come up with some other way, and that must have preyed on his mind day and night.
Sean plans to strike again, so he steals a gun from his stepfather, Paul.
He seems like a good tool for him to use. And he just seemed to have no qualms about it.
I am your vessel. I am your temple.
That night, when Sean's parents go to bed, he performs a satanic ritual to summon the demon who helped him kill once before.
Kill them! Kill them! Kill them now! Kill them now!
I understand.
I walked over to the bed, and I lifted the gun up, and I put it close to my father's head, and I pulled the trigger.
In The Omen, the devil is born on Earth as a young child named Damien Thorne. Damien's family has no idea how evil their little boy truly is.
Life is good for Catherine and her family for a while, and things are fine at first. And then here comes trouble. That is similar to what we see with Sean Sellers and his family.
Sean is a teenager obsessed with the occult, and he's on a mission to kill again. He believes he's possessed by a demon who's providing him with the power to murder.
I understand.
He was upset about, parental controls. They didn't particularly like one of the young girls he was with, and he thought if he killed it, he could do whatever he wanted to.
I walked over to the bed, and I lifted the gun up, and I put it close to my father's head, and I pulled the trigger.
But Sean isn't finished.
Vonda awakened because the sound of the boom certainly interrupted her sleep. But her eyes had not been able to adjust to the darkness at that point.
She lifted her head, and I immediately raised the gun up and pointed it at my mother. And again pulled the trigger. And I stood there and I looked at him. And my mother, there was blood running out the side of her head. And I stood there and I laughed.
Killing Paul was just a means to an end. He knew that Paul was much larger than he was. He knew that Paul was a former Green Beret. And killing his mother was, to me, the intended target. Paul just happened to be in the way.
Sean, in that moment, was feeling elated that he had accomplished his deed that he had planned to do. He seemed to just feel nothing about it.
Just as Damien does in The Omen, Sean finally gets rid of his parents.
They were just gone. They were gone, and that's what he wanted. They were gone.
Immediately after, Sean tears through his house, hoping to make the murders look like a burglary gone wrong.
He did rifle through some drawers, maybe threw some clothes around or something, like somebody might have been searching for something, to burglarize or something like that.
But when it's all over, Sean suddenly realizes the horror of what he's done.
Once Sean confirmed that his parents were truly dead, he needed to see his friend, Richard. He needed to talk to someone. He needed someone to confess to. After all, Richard had been witness to his first killing.
He drove over to Richard's house and knocked on the door, and Richard said, what did you do? He couldn't believe at first Richard could not really believe at first that he had actually done it. He said, I did it. He said, you did what? And I killed him.
I need your help. Can I come in?
Yeah, come in.
John tells Richard everything, and together the boys come up with a plan.
Right? We're not going to jail for this.
The plan in their minds is that Sean has spent the night with Richard, like they usually do. He gave the gun to Richard, where Richard then hid the gun.
The plan calls for the two boys to return to Sean's home the next day, acting as if life is completely normal.
Sean goes into the bathroom and wets his face to make it look as if he's been crying. And then he runs outside the house screaming and yelling, as if he's just come across finding both his parents having been shot to death due to a break-in, a robbery.
And a neighbor comes running out to see what's going on, and he calls 911. And Sean is putting on a great act that, there's blood in the house, but somebody's killed my parents.
Everything seems to be going exactly as planned. But when the neighbor calls the police, things start to fall apart.
When the detectives get there, they feel that Sean is acting quite right. He's seen a lot of people, you know, in grief after their family murders. Parents had been murdered, and Sean just didn't seem exactly like, you know, he was acting quite right.
Sean and Richard are both detained and subjected to several hours of grueling interrogation.
When the detectives took both Sean and Richard down to the police department to interrogate them, they of course talked to them separately.
It doesn't take long for police to suspect that all is not what it seems.
I think that Sean did not think that they would be investigating him at all. Once he told the story that, well, I was not even here. Somebody came in and killed my parents, and there's blood everywhere. Well, I think that Sean really believed that he would not be under any real suspicion.
But when police talk to Richard, the truth comes to light.
Richard pretty well gave it up at the very beginning. He knew he was in big trouble, but he also knew that he had not pulled the trigger.
And Sean follows suit.
And at that point, the jig is up, and he confessed everything.
Sean even tells police about his first murder, the convenience store worker, Robert Bauer.
The Robert Bauer murder had been unsolved. And so the police are able to piece together Robert Bauer and Sean's mother and stepfather.
Sean and Richard are immediately arrested and charged with murder.
During the trial, Richard was very quick to testify on behalf of the prosecution. So he was probably one of Sean's largest adversaries at that point.
Richard receives a 5-year deferred sentence for being an accessory after the fact in all 3 murders in return for his testimony. Sean is found guilty and sentenced to death by lethal injection. Behind bars, Sean loses his faith in Satan and turns back to Christianity.
Sean's change in prison is not unlike a lot of our killers who are put in prison for the rest of their lives or are given the death penalty. They find Jesus very quick.
I cannot understand taking a person and telling them that they are so evil and so pitiful and so vile that they do not even deserve the chance to change.
After years of incarceration, Sean files several appeals.
He appealed for clemency at one particular time and was immediately denied that clemency.
I'm so sorry for what I did. I don't regret it because I got caught. I don't regret it because I'm on death row. I regret it because of what I did.
Despite his transformation, Sean Sellers is executed on February 4th, 1999. Unlike the movie franchise that follows The Omen, Sean's story is over.
You would like to be able to say that Sean was a mixed-up kid who got caught up in Satanism and did something that he wouldn't have but didn't deserve to die. I don't know that I can say that.
This boy, who wanted to be in control and all-powerful, like Damien in The Omen, lost everything, including his life.